Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sulakshna, hosting this webinar on behalf of Wadhwani Foundation National Entrepreneurship Network. WFNEN is doing a phenomenal job in supporting startups, early stage and growth stage entrepreneurs and SMEs to grow their business. Entrepreneurs need mentors to scale their business to the next level, and WFNEN provides such mentoring and learning platform for free to those who come and register at wfnen.org. The mechanism is a very straightforward approach with goal-based, time-bound and structured mentoring. Enrich yourself connecting to 400 plus mentors from various fields of work and make a difference. As we begin, I'm so pleased to be with you and to have the chance to introduce our speaker, Hemant Dharnidharka. Hemant Dharnidharka is CEO at Dharni Group. He is an investment professional with over 10 years of experience in the wealth management and financial research domain. He is the founder of Dharni Group and is heading the overall operations of the group. He has been responsible for developing large strategic business endeavors for Dharni Group and has been very successful with collaborating and creating relationships. Hemant is a commerce graduate from St. Xavier's College, Kolkata, and MBA in Finance and Strategy from IIM Lucknow. He has also completed Chartered Accountancy and Company Secretary courses. He also possesses certification from Association of Mutual Funds of India in mutual funds and CFM certification in derivatives. He has an overall experience of 10 years in the finance industry. He was working last as Managing Director with SGS Markets in Bangalore. He has previously worked with YLE Services, Frontline Analysts, Cadbury and Citibank. After the presentation, we would have a discussion session for around 20 minutes where Hemant would answer your questions. So please send me relevant questions over chat, which would be answered at the end of the session. I would love to hear your feedback on today's session. Your input and suggestions for future sessions are invaluable to me. So please leave your feedback on the poll. Have a great session and check back the webinar link on the website to hear the recorded version for self-learning and access the presentation anytime. You can also connect with the speaker who is also a mentor on wfnen.org. Over to you, Hemant.
Hello, everyone. Hello.
Yeah, you can please continue, Hemant.
Sulakshna, at this moment, I think other than both of us, there's no one else in the attendee list as I can see.
No. There are attendants. People have joined.
Okay. Okay. All right.
So you can please continue. Yeah.
Hello, everyone. This is Hemant. All of you know about the Wadhwani Foundation Entrepreneurship Network. I think this slide would be of interest to you, funding support. So the pitch lab, the loan connect and the engagements with angel investors facilitation. A bit about me, as Sulakshna has already spoken. So our today's session is on cash flow management. As startups and wannabe entrepreneurs, for most of us, cash flow management becomes a big deal because when we are starting up, paucity of cash is a lot more common compared to a well-established company with steady cash flows. And as we know, why do we need cash flow management? For any startup, or for that matter, any company, cash flow is the final frontier. If the business is stable, running, and earning enough cash flows, the business might continue till perpetuity. One thing we must always remember is that we can incur losses for many years, but you can run out of cash only once. And that day is called bankruptcy. So when we look at some examples, in the e-commerce space today, we know the companies like Amazon and Flipkart, they have been incurring losses since their inception. But they have been raising more money. And so what has happened is that they are burning the cash, but they still have enough cash. At any point, when you speak with them, they say we have enough cash. We are investing this much into sales, etc. This year, as we speak, a couple of them have started the sales or are about to start their yearly seasonal festive sales. So, but they have enough money at any given point in time. They have never said that, our vendors, we are not being able to pay, or our employees, we are not being able to pay. As long as they are paying and they are growing, they hope to make money, higher inflows compared to cash flows over a period of time. And that's what keeps them running. When we look at the valuation, some of these companies have, the likes of Amazon, etc., are at an astounding valuation without any high profit, right? But they know that we are growing our business, and as long as we have enough cash flows, we'll continue to fund the business, grow it further till we become profitable. And at that point, the support which the founders or the new investors were giving to the business will slow down or stop at some point. And conversely, the business will begin to return the money to those investors. When we look at the process of managing cash flows, I would like to focus on three things. One is improving receivables. Second would be managing the payables. And the third, obviously, would be the variance between the two, where if the receivables are lower and payables are higher, how do we survive the shortfall? As I said earlier, that we can't run out of money. That won't really work. So when we look at improving cash flows, in an ideal world, if all of us were paid for the sales the instant we made them, we would never have a cash flow problem. That a business sells something for $100 and he receives $100 immediately, that would be great. You go and immediately pay your suppliers and keep your profit. But unfortunately, that rarely happens. There would be very few businesses where you are able to buy on credit and sell on cash. Most of the time, we end up giving credit to our customers. That's the reason we need to manage that cash flow. One thing we need to look at is to improve the speed with which you can turn your materials and services into cash. Some of the things which we could very easily do to improve the speed of cash conversion cycle. The easiest at the top of the list would be offer discounts to customers who pay their bills rapidly. So you'd see companies, wholesalers, etc., having something called a cash payment discount. So they would say that we'll sell you a product for $100 if you pay within with a 90-day credit period, let's say. If you repay within 30 days, we'll give you a 3% discount or a 2% discount. A 3% discount for 2 months works close to 18% per annum interest. So people who are willing and able to pay, they would prefer to probably pay them at $98 and say that, I had to pay $100 after 2 months in any case. So if I paid $97 or $98 now, I've saved enough in interest to use that money elsewhere. This would be mostly in case of commodities, wholesalers, because for retail customers, in any case, either you expect a cash payment immediately or you would expect a credit card swiping or something like that. So the cash conversion cycle would be low. A second larger way is to ask customers to make deposit payments at the time orders are taken. So when we look at the current e-commerce companies, as soon as we place an order, we first need to swipe our credit card or use the online payment mechanism in whatever form, or at max maybe cash on delivery. If we knock off a cash on delivery for the moment, in most of the other scenarios, we have actually made the payment while we are yet to receive the product. So the e-commerce company knows that we have received the money. Unless this person really dislikes the product, the sale is made. Whereas if I have not paid the money, let's say in a cash on delivery basis, the return percentages are much higher. So the companies have figured out that in India, because a lot of people were compatible only with cash and not really with the online payment system, so they did come up with a cash on delivery model, which was an innovation for made for the Indian market, which has worked well. Then we could require credit checks on all new non-cash customers. In India, the CIBIL rating scores, etc., are still evolving, even though they have been around for around 14-15 years now. So for a non-cash paying customer, if you check their credit score and say that this person has a very high credit score. The CIBIL credit score is on a range of 300 to 900, 900 being theoretical highest. Anybody with a score of more than 800 would get a good credit rating. So we know that this person has not really defaulted in the past. So if we extend the credit to him, there's a very high likelihood that the payment will be made. Get rid of old outdated inventory for whatever you can get. So a lot of times, more so in the technological space, when a new product is launched, the old product loses its value much more significantly. Now, let's say if we look at a product like an iPhone, once the iPhone 8 is launched, iPhone 6 will lose its value very fast. At that point, it might actually make sense to immediately sell it off, even if you are having to sell it at a cash loss. Because let's say the phone's MRP when you were selling earlier was 100. Now after the launch of new products, the MRP or the estimated sale value has fallen to 60. Someone might come in and say that, no, I want to buy it for 55. It still makes sense at a lot of times to sell it for 55, because if you hold on to it for a few months more, probably you'll have to sell it at 40 or so. That's the reason whenever in the case of, let's say, iPhones, whenever the new iPhones are launched, all the previous models tend to lose their value. And that's the reason around that time you generally see a sale where you could buy the older models at a significant discount. In the startup space, one thing which we should look at is to issue invoices promptly and then follow up immediately if the payments are slow in coming. What happens is a lot of us could be from the technological background or from sales, non-finance background, I should say. What happens is we end up giving the service or the product, and then we don't really raise the invoice immediately. A lot of large companies would say, no, from the day I received the invoice, there's a 20-day, 30-day processing time. So it will take those 30 days. So at least you know that this was the day. Let's say I provided the service on the 29th of August, but because of other commitments, I have not raised the invoice till 15th of September. Now, when I raise the invoice on 16th of September, the company would say, oh, I just received your invoice on 16th. Give me some time. I'll put it on processing. It takes 3 weeks to process. Your invoice will come up on the payment cycle on 8th of October, and we make a fortnight payment, so your payment will be released on 15th of October. Whereas if I had probably raised the invoice on 29th of August, maybe the payment could have happened a month earlier or at least 15 days earlier if the company follows a fortnightly cycle. Take accounts receivable to identify and avoid slow paying customers. So a lot of times for wholesalers or for institutional clients, you'd start off and maybe make a sale to 100 customers. Out of the 100, you'll figure out that maybe 20, 30, 40 wanted to get the cash discount. So they were very prompt in paying. There were maybe another 40, 45 which paid at closer to the due date. And there might be 10 customers who would say that, you know, this happened, that happened. There could be some stories involved that will take a bit more time. Instituting a policy of cash on delivery is such an alternative to refusing to do business with slow paying customers. As a business, we can't say that, you know, last time you did not pay me for 45 days, I'm not going to serve you this time anymore. That doesn't really work and would not show you in a professional light. But what you can very easily do is say that, sir, we need to make the payments. We have made some institutionalized changes. So we need to receive half of the money at the time of starting the work or immediately when we do the work, which will help in getting money out from such customers a lot faster. So after this, we move to the managing payables side. The top line sales growth can conceal a lot of problems and sometimes too well. What happens is when your sales are growing and if you have a 90-day credit period, because the incoming revenue is higher than the outgoing revenue for 3 months old payments, because let's say if you are growing at 5% per annum per month, which is pretty much possible in a small startup space, you would see that you had $100 to pay for 3 months ago, and because you have been growing by 5% every month, in 3 months your cost is 115, you are selling at 130, let's say with a 15% kind of a margin, you will still have enough money. But when the music stops, at some point you'll figure out when the business stabilizes that your costs are going up, whereas your revenues are not growing up by the same pace. When we talk of managing payables effectively, the first thing to take is the full advantage of the creditor payment terms. So Let's say if a payment is due in 30 days, don't pay it in 15 days. Now this is exactly the opposite of managing receivables, which we were talking about, where we were trying to get the money as soon as possible. But when we are on the payment side, you try to say that, okay, I've given you a post-dated check. So I purchased the stuff on 20th of September 2017. You have given me a 30-day payment cycle. I'll give you a check dated 20th of October. If you have a good track record, they know that your check will be honored on 20th of October. If they want, they could probably even do a bill discounting or something if the numbers involved were higher. Whereas from your account, the money has not left till the 19th of October. Another thing which is being commonly used nowadays is use electronic funds transfer to make the payment on last day they are due. You'll remain current with the suppliers while retaining the use of your funds for as long as possible. Now, as things are evolving, we are getting out of scenarios where people used to dispatch the checks on the 20th, let's say in the example I was discussing on 20th of October, and show that, you know, the check was posted, which will be received on 25th, and then maybe encashed on 30th, because that doesn't work in the long run nowadays, because your supplier also wants to be paid on his due date. Communicate with your supplier so that they know your financial situation. If you ever need to delay a payment, you'll need their trust and understanding. So let's say you are in a cyclical business where in the festive season you make a lot more sales and you make the payments much faster. Then there's a lull where your fixed costs being higher, you might not have enough additional money to pay the suppliers on time every time. If you show them that, you know, when I had received more money, I had actually paid you, even instead of 30 days, I had made some payments even in 20 days, or I had given some advances for cash discounts, kind of things, they'll be a lot more willing to accommodate a few day delay without actually spoiling your reputation with them. Carefully consider vendors' offer of discounts for earlier payments. These can amount to expensive loan to your suppliers. So if the supplier says that, okay, if you give me the payment earlier, I'll give you a 3% discount, as I earlier discussed. If you think that you'll not be able to earn 18% elsewhere, it might make sense to actually go ahead and make that payment and take the cash discount. But if you think you'll be a bit stretched and you're getting a discount which is equivalent to only, let's say, 12% per annum, no point raising money at 15% to pay at 12%. Even at the same level, it's better to keep the supplier's credit on the last day payment basis instead of taking a loan and then using the same money to repay the supplier, because there's additional clerical work involved without any additional benefit. Don't always focus on the lowest price while choosing suppliers. Sometimes more flexible payment terms can improve your cash flows more than a bargain basement price. So at the time of demonetization, let's say as an example, one supplier was willing to say that I'll sell it to you at $100, but you need to make the payment right away. Whereas the second guy said that, no, I'll charge you $104, but you'll need to pay me after 120 days. That was as good as getting loans at 12%, which probably would have been much more easier for the business, because then the business could actually go ahead, take that product, try to sell it, monetize it faster, and keep the money with itself. Maybe pay other suppliers who did not have this kind of a policy. See, when we look at the working capital cycle, we have cash. From the cash, we buy raw materials. The raw materials would become work in progress. Work in progress would then move to finished goods. They might sit in the inventory for a few days till we sell it. As soon as we sell it, the buyer would become a sundry debtor who would have a certain amount of credit period that would reflect probably as bills receivables or as debtors, and then we receive the payment from them. This operating cycle is sacrosanct. This has not really changed across industries, across segments, across the years. Now, in this setup, one thing which has evolved, some of the companies have been doing it successfully, is a negative working capital cycle. How would you have a negative working capital cycle? A negative working capital situation would arise when a company's current liabilities exceeds its current assets. So let's say if a company had payables of $100 and it had receivables of only $50, that means the company has probably received the money earlier, assuming that the company was selling its products at a profit. This means that the liabilities that need to be paid within, let's say, a year exceeds the current assets that are monetizable over the same period. When would that happen? Let's say we purchase from a supplier on a 90-day credit. So on day 0, we have made the purchase and we have committed that we'll pay you after 3 months. The sales for with a 30-day credit happen within the next 15 days. So let's say if I take 1st of January is when I purchased the products, and on 15th of January I sold it with a 1-month credit period. By 15th of February approximately, I would receive the money from the debtor. But to my supplier, I have to pay it maybe on the 1st of April or 31st of March. Now, between the 15th of February and 30th of March, 31st of March, I could use this money to put it into liquid funds or in the bank as an FD and earn money on it for 45 days. It's as good as my suppliers actually lending me money on which I'm earning interest and not really paying them anything. Some of the companies which have successfully followed this model in the Indian context on the FMCG space, Unilever and Nestle. So the numbers which I've given, let's say if we'll take the same example for a Unilever, if you look at most of the Unilever products, Unilever is more of a branding company and production is done by generally a smaller manufacturing organization where Unilever is just the licensee and the brand belongs to Unilever. Let's say in case of a thing like Lux. I'm not saying that they don't have factories. In some cases they still have factories, but a large part of their manufacturing is outsourced. So they take a 90-day credit from that person that will pay you after 90 days for whatever is shipped out from your store, and within 15 days they get it to their distribution network. A lot of times they ask the smaller distributors to pay in cash. They might give a 30-day credit. They will receive the money in 45 days from day 0, and the payment to supplier is due only after 90 days. Such companies then are able to use that money to either spend more on the marketing spend or even make float. If they want to enter into a new business line where there might be initial setup costs, they can use this money for that purpose. Same story with Nestle. Bajaj Auto and Hero Honda on the other side were in the consumer durable space. So it was a bit surprising when the likes of Bajaj and Hero Honda were able to do the same negative working capital cycle very effectively. What probably allowed them to do this is that some of the products which they were selling, because of the high demand for the two-wheelers, they were able to convert it into cash faster, whereas steel, metals, nuts, seeds, etc., most of their raw material costs were such that they could actually make the payments at a later date. This allowed them to go through the same negative working capital cycle, which allowed them to have more money in the account. When the stock market looks at a company or an investor looks at a company with negative working capital, that shows that the company is in a good position to negotiate both with its suppliers and with its customers with benefits to the company. So from the suppliers, they are able to take a longer credit cycle, and from their customers, they are able to get the money much faster. This shows that the USP of the company is just making the product and being able to sell it. Means again, using the Apple iPhone example where people have queued up in the past for long enough lines, that gives the strength to the company even when the stock market or an investor looks at it, which allows the company valuation to go higher, which helps everybody involved or having a stake in the company. So if the cash flow management is great, nothing like it, but there will be situations where there will be shortfalls due to various reasons, some man-made, some seasonal, some due to unforeseen events. And the best way to manage the cash flow shortfall problem is to become aware of the problem as early and as accurately as possible. So if you figure it out that I'm entering the seasonal space in the month of September where my sales will be much higher, my feet on the ground needs to be much higher, and at that point immediately you go in and say that, okay, I'll need more money. A lot more people might be willing to extend that credit. You could go to your supplier and say that in the month of July and August, that I'll be able to make the payments only in the month of November, but I'll buy twice the stuff which I buy from you. If your credit record with the supplier is great, the supplier would be in many cases willing to extend that credit. You could go to the other competitors of the supplier and take a similar credit line that I already pay $10,000 to this gentleman every month. I can pay $10,000 to you every month as well. The new creditor would be much more willing to do that because they know that if this allows them to open up a new supply line to you. This would happen in case the first supplier is not in a financial position or is not willing to extend your credit line as desired. Banks are wary of borrowers who need the money today. Means coming from the banking industry, we always had a joke that a banker is the person who is willing to offer you his umbrella until it begins to rain. The moment it begins to rain, he wants his umbrella back. So they would be much prefer lending to you before you need it, preferably months before. So when you don't really need the money, you have a great sound liquidity position, you go to a bank and say, give me a 3-year credit line of, let's say in the example I was discussing, $10,000, the bank will be a lot more happy to do it because they earn a small commission by extending the credit line even if you don't use it. And for you, you have a $10,000 backstop. Means I'm just taking numbers as an example. The numbers actually would be pretty much different, but the process would be the same. So you would have a backstop that tomorrow, if I get a great cash discount or I need to buy more from my supplier, I need to increase my inventory, in any of these situations, you'll have enough money, write a check from the bank and pay to the supplier. Once the money comes back, you again repay the bank, let's say if it was an overdraft line, and again get it down to zero. It's very common to see that people who have credit lines use it only for their seasonal spikes, but because they are paying a 0.25% or a 0.5% commitment fee for the whole year, the bank is more than happy to allow them that line. And for the customer, it is good because they know that at the seasonal point, they'll get more variety from you, and for you it works out well because if you're selling more, you're making more money. When the reason you are caught short is that you failed to plan, a banker is not going to be very interested in helping you out. So on the 20th of September, if I go in and say that, you know, mate, I am running a bit short on funds because I thought I'll have enough money, but my debtors have not paid me. Please, are you willing to give me the money? Either they will refuse upfront, or in most of the cases, they'll charge an obscene interest rate. So today, with the growth of CIBIL, etc., we are seeing individuals being offered personal loans at a price as low as 9.5%, whereas a credit card debt could go as high as 36%. So if you had not planned, you would go for a credit card debt. If you had planned the same expense, the same number, you could have actually gone in and taken a personal loan from the same bank at 9.5%. That could be a huge difference in the bottom line of the company or the individual's cash flows. If you assume from the beginning that you will be someday be short on your cash, you can arrange for a line of credit. This allows you to borrow money at a preset limit when you need it. Since it's far easier to borrow when you don't need it, arranging a line before you fall short is vital. That's what I discussed, that you could have a 3-year credit line which they'll be willing to renew as long as they know that their commitment fee were made on time. And for you also, it would show that yes, there were some instances over a 3-year period or over a 1-year period where you actually use that credit line and it helped you gain more market share or gain more customers or have more profit, gain in some form or the other. Basically, you would also be willing to renew the credit line year on year. Now, bankers might or might not help. If the bankers don't help, the next set of people you might have to turn to is your suppliers. These people are more interested in keeping you going than a banker, and they probably know more about your business because they are supplying probably to 100 people like you or thousands of people like you. You can often get extended terms from the supplier that amounts to a hefty low-cost loan by just asking. If you just ask them that, could I make the payment in 90 days instead of 60? Maybe he'll mark it up by a few basis points or a percentage point, but you know that I have enough money as needed, or I have enough supply which I could convert to money in the next few months. This thing would be especially true if you have been a good customer in the past and you have kept them informed about your financial situation. That this year I'm planning to double my sales, so I would need double the credit amount, or I would need a bit higher period because I'm moving into a new shop or into a new office. So whatever cash flows are coming in, I'm planning to use them there. The supplier would be willing because he sees that if your business grows, his business with you also grows at almost a similar pace. Consider using factors. What are factors? These are financial service businesses that can pay you today for receivables which you may not be able to otherwise collect for weeks or for months. Factoring is done very commonly in case of exports, but it could be equally done in case of local businesses. So let's say I am an exporter and I am shipping a container worth $100,000 to the US. Now, the guy in the US says that I have not checked each piece till I have received the money in the US. So the US buyer gives money to his bank, and my bank tells me that, okay, we have received the documentation from him. As soon as the buyer confirms that the payment has been made successfully and the goods have been received and found to be in order, the payment will be released. In such a scenario, the bank, if they know that, because they could have been in a situation where they were able to actually check that the products which have been shipped are in line with what was ordered. So they could say that, okay, you'll receive your $100,000 in 3 months' time. If you need the money today, we'll deduct a 3% interest and give you $97,000 today. For you, it might make sense to actually go ahead and do this because that will give you a lot more money right away to pay off all your debts linked to the supply which from your end you have already made. In some cases from the suppliers, you could receive as much as 15% less since they demand a hefty discount, but you would eliminate the hassle of collecting and be able to fund current operations without borrowing. In cases, there was something called factoring without recourse, where if the other guy doesn't pay, the risk is on the bank and not on you. Those are the cases where you might receive a significantly lower amount. But for a new business, for a smaller business where it was their biggest deal ever, it probably still makes sense to go ahead and do this for the first few cycles till the time your cash flows begin to match the outflows, and you know that whatever you have exported is actually your profit share earned in the last few weeks or last few years, so that you can afford to keep that money outstanding for 3 months. Ask your best customers to accelerate payments. So first was the bank, second was the suppliers, third would be your customers. Explain the situation. If necessary, offer them a discount of a percentage point or two of the bill that, can you please pay me money today instead of paying me after 1 month? We need some money. A lot of times, shrewd customers would be willing to negotiate on the discount aspect, but because they know that if they pay up earlier, they are saving enough money. And if they are moneyed customers, they would be very much willing to take up the discount and pay you after the discount. Along with the best customers, you should also go after your worst customers. Those whose invoices are more than, let's say, 90 days past due. Offer them a discount if they paid today. But in these cases, as we discussed on one of the earlier slides, next time onwards, if they want to do business with you, it has to be cash on delivery or some sort of an advance. So it still helps you in liquidating your debtors and getting the money which you could use successfully. You may be able to raise cash by selling and leasing back assets, machinery, equipment, computers, phone systems, even furniture, legally speaking. One of the most common industries where sale and leaseback is par for the course is the airline industry, where most of the airlines rarely own the planes because there are financing companies. So they order, let's say in India, an Indico might have ordered 100 planes. When they get the planes delivered, they sell it to a leasing company and then lease it back from them, because this allows them to be asset light on their balance sheet, and they continue to pay the yearly lease payments. In case of new planes, generally it is committed for maybe 2 years, 3 years or 5 years, so that the company, leasing company is able to get some cushion. Leasing companies may be willing to perform the transactions. It is not cheap, and you could lose your asset if you miss the lease payments. So as we know, in case of, let's say, the Kingfisher airline, most of their planes were leased, and when the airline shut down, there were no planes left. most of them were gone because the leasing company said, we have not received our payments, we are taking back the plane. In some cases, the leasing companies would have actually benefited a lot more because, let's say, if the value of the plane was 100 and the airline had already paid 60 as lease and it had probably an option of buying the plane at 20 after another year, but because the company shut down, they could have taken the asset right away and sold it at 50, 60 or $70 if it was in a good condition and actually made a big profit.
Next month 1400 pay.
These are some of the investors, funding mentors. Any questions you people have? I'm willing to answer them now. I'm done with my presentation.
Okay.
Hello everyone. So we had a very great session from Hemant. So now we have a discussion session for around 20 minutes where Hemant would answer your questions. So please send me relevant questions over chat, which I can take up and take it up with Hemant for his answers. And if you want to even have a direct line opening up for him, you can just put your handouts and I can just connect you over the call so that you can have a direct session with him. Also, I'd love to hear your feedback on today's session. So I'll just pop up a poll at your screen. So please, audience, give us your feedback on today's session, which will help us to plan up our future sessions. So Hemant, I have got a question from Priyesh Sharma. Priyesh writes, in case of business such as IT services, how the payment structure should be like when it's not clear the exact amount of requirements, deliverables, and what they amount to. How do you suggest the payment structure be credited?
In such situations, generally the method followed is milestone-based payments. So let's say if you are delivering a software which has 10 different deliverables or 10 different parts, either you could do that once part A is delivered, you get paid for it, or you could have a time-based payment where you know that the service or the product will be delivered, let's say, in a 10 months time. In the first quarter, you could be billing 25%, second quarter billing another 25%, in the third quarter another 20%. Generally, the buyer would say that they want to keep at least 20-30% for the last milestone-based payment, where only after the product is delivered, they'll make the complete payment. But this allows the supplier or the service provider in this case to actually get some cash flows on an ongoing basis. And the buyer of the product also gets to see that, yes, the person has already done XYZ part of this job, which might be, let's say, 25%. So he's a lot more happy to release a partial payment because they also understand this very well, that the supplier also needs to have recurring inflows. Then only he'll be able to deliver the whole product at a predetermined period.
Kiran Kotagi, I have opened your line. You may please ask your question.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello. Hi. Are you listening?
Yes.
I have a question that we have a credit limit of 30 days from a supplier. Okay. And the delivery should take at least 3 days. So later on, when we supply to our customers and the services, and the payments will come after this credit limits. So how do we manage this difference actually? We need to pay supplier as well and get the payments from the customer.
Yes, so that's where the working capital comes in. In how many days would you receive the money from the customers on an average?
It depends, at least 20-25 days.
25. Let me take it as a month. So you receive the product, the delivery happens in 3 days. Let's say you sell it in another 7 days.
Okay.
So by day 10.
So installation part will be our service.
Yes, so that's
installation of that product. Okay. So when we sign up, it will take around 10 days for a customer to end up with the project. So later on, sending the
30 days from there. So
exactly.
Are getting your money in 40 days, and you have to pay your supplier in 30 days. So there's a 10-day gap.
Yes, correct.
One is if you see this as a recurring cycle, you could ask your supplier for a 40-45 day credit instead of 30 days. If that is not possible, then you will have to figure out what is your average sale in 10 days, and you will need
Okay.
to arrange that kind of money either as an equity capital or as a loan capital. So let's say if you sell
Okay.
stuff worth $100 in a month,
Mhm.
on day one, you purchase stuff at maybe let's say $90 and sold it on day 10 to your customer. On day 40, you will receive $100 from your customer. But to your
Okay.
supplier, you need to make the payment of $90 on
Yes.
day 30.
30.
So
Correct.
if you are selling stuff worth $100 every day, first 10 days, $1,000 is what you would need as your working capital, because the day one payment will be done on day 30, day 10
Okay.
payment will be done on day 40, and
Okay.
the supplies which you had done from day 40, your inflows will begin to match your outflows, and you'll also have the profit share.
Okay. Okay. I understood. Thanks. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Welcome.
I am next opening the line for Suman Kumar Jha. Suman, you can please ask your question. Hello, Suman. Suman, can you please ask your question? Okay, Suman had asked a question, what about cash flow for a company who will make money after 1.5 years? Any kind of money?
In that case, the company needs to have enough cash, whatever is their cash burn rate in that planned 18 months. So let's say if the company says that its first product will come out after 18 months, and in 18 months at let's say 1 lakh rupees a month in fixed costs, the company needs 18 lakh rupees plus in the first few months the company might not actually have enough revenues to cover its costs. If the company feels that they'll be able to match up their fixed costs after 30 months, then 1 lakh rupees per month into 30 months, 30 lakhs is the amount of money needed in the bank even before you start. That's where the angel funds generally come in, where if they like the idea, they bankroll the entrepreneur to actually reach a stage where the product is out in the market and is able to earn money.
There is one question from Rajiv. Rajiv, I'm opening your line. Rajiv, you are, yeah, can you just put up your question?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can all hear you.
Yes.
Yeah, great. Though I was a attendee, I joined in a little late. I'm sorry I missed on the content, and but still I'm putting up my question. See, I'm heading a chit fund company in Kanpur for the last 18 years, and my company is practically 60 years old. I'm the third generation in the trade, and we are steady. Very steady by Almighty's blessings. What I'm asking you is, there are, when we actually circulate our money in the market, everything appears to be rosy for us because we've created entry barriers for our customers. We select customers on the experience we have for the last 50 years. Now what happens is, suddenly something goes wrong with the customer and the customer account becomes sticky. Now, how do I calculate and how do I actually have, how do I really weigh my need of cash flow? What account at what given point of time is going to go sticky? It becomes very, very uncertain for us. So when I'm running this kind of business, how do I actually have a control over my cash flows? Something which is coming right now may not come 6 months down the line, may not come 1 year down the line. So, I mean, what is your suggestion for hire purchase companies, NBFCs, and chit fund companies? What do you feel?
See, all three would have different segments. So would you like to stick to one, or you would want for all three?
No, I would love to stick to chit fund, the kind of segment.
See, that's the reason when we look at the financial services space, let's say a bank, which does something similar at a different level, you need to have certain amount as reserves so that even if your customer has not paid up, you honor your commitments to your supplier, in this case your investor. And if the default rates are higher, what you end up doing is you end up charging a higher commission, or the discount in case of chit funds would be higher in the beginning few months, because the reserves need to take care of the defaults which are inbuilt in the system. There is a reason credit card companies charge 36%, because the default rates in credit cards are very high, whereas home loans are available at 8.5% because the default rates in home loan are very low. Finally, it's the same bank lending to the same person.
Correct. Hello?
Hello? Yes, so you'll have to build more reserves to factor.
No, what I'm trying to say is reserves, building of reserves is happening. We do that, we flow back profits. But if I have to ask you that my business is of 1 rupee, how do I quantify my reserve? What should be my reserve for this kind of industry? I mean, wherein I start feeling a little more safe, I start feeling a little more secure. How should I quantify that?
I would again look at the example of banks where the statutory liquidity ratio and the cash reserve ratio, which RBI mandates for banks, is around 22% and 4%, that at least 22% of your total balance sheet you should be able to liquidate by going to someone much more stronger than you. In case of banks, it's the RBI. So those 22-23% of the investments are held in the form of government securities. The government can theoretically print money and give it to you, so there's no question of default, even though inflation could run amok. And they have a 4-5% cash reserve ratio, because they know that at any given point in time, you would probably not need more than 4% in a day or two or in a week.
Correct.
So that's would be the kind of numbers again, and depending on your experience, if you feel that no, this number is too high or too low, you could always tweak it as per your need.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
And Rajiv, though you have joined late, this webinar recording would be available on the website wfnen.org by tomorrow. So you can check back on the recording, and you can also access the presentation from there.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
There is another question. I cannot name the participant because he has not mentioned his name. However, I'll read out the question. Can you suggest options for purchase order based finance? That is, I have an order in hand from a customer in the form of purchase order. Can I show that to some bank or NBFC or private financer who can lend me cash based on that? Any options in market who provide quick lending?
The easiest thing to do in such a case would be to go to your supplier and show him the purchase order and say that you need a 15-day additional window over and above that payment date. So let's say if the purchase order says that you will be paid within 30 days, you go to the supplier and ask him for 45 days of credit. You take the product from the supplier, get it ready, and sell it to your customer. In case you feel there are competence issues, conflicting issues rather, where if the supplier gets to know of the buyer himself, he might do it himself. In that case, we'll have to organize for funding. The initial part will need to probably come in as equity, where you have invested enough money for the first purchase order as your equity, gone ahead, purchased the stuff from the supplier by probably paying cash, received it, given it to the customer. Now the customer becomes your debtor. At that point, you could begin using the factoring services to pay for your second customer's order.
So this question was from Kalyan. So I hope, Kalyan, your question has been answered. Any more questions? If participants have any more questions, please send it across via chat or raise hand so that I can connect you to the speaker. This is a great chance for you to interact live with Hemant and get answers to your questions. So please utilize this to your full potential and have a very fruitful interactive session with him. Suman, I see you have raised hand. Do you have any question? Suman Kumar Jha. We are not hearing much from you, Suman. If you have any questions, please you can also write to me via chat. Rajiv, you have any question? Yeah, Rajiv,
Hello.
you have any question?
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hemant, one more thing. I have been off lately hearing a lot about LAS, loan against securities. I mean, when I understand that there's no point putting in money now in FDRs and availing credit limit against FDRs. I mean, the moment I approach a commercial bank, the moment I approach an organized sector lending institution for loan against securities, wherein I have a lot of money in debt funds, I have a lot of money in hybrid funds, but when I see these banks are, I mean, not giving enough credit on these loan against securities, and they are primarily compelling us to park our money in FDRs. Now my question is, what option do I have as a customer when I have money parked in debt funds wherein my returns are tax-free, and I would like to avail a credit on those funds wherein my returns are tax-free, vis-a-vis my money parked with reserve bank, with FDRs, and I can't, I mean, practically my take home is nothing after paying of tax. So, I mean, is there any institution, is there any remedy available to me wherein I can avail a credit line on my securities invested with mutual funds?
No, that would not normally be the case, because when you park your money as an FD, let's say at 6.5%, the bank is fully secured. There is no way you will lose that money. So if you have put in 10 lakh rupees, they'll give you immediately a credit line of 9 lakhs. And they know that their money as well as the interest for the next 1 year is completely secured. Generally, the rate of interest they would be giving on these products is 1% more than the FD rate, or 2% more than the FD rate, depending on the volume involved.
Right.
Now, when you go and invest the same money in a debt fund, the bank is not making any money. And unless the bank makes a few percentage points, the fixed costs of the banks are generally in the ballpark of 2.5%. So unless the bank is able to earn that much over its cost of funds, which is the base rate which the bank says, below which they cannot rate, they cannot really lend to anyone, it becomes difficult for the banks to actually issue give loans at a lower rate. More so in a industry which is not a priority sector lending, so they don't get the priority sector credit where they have to park in close to 40%. What can be done is you could do a split where you keep some amount in the banks as FDs. Let's say if you need 100 rupees, you put 70 rupees in liquid funds or debt funds, keep 30 rupees in bank FDs. And when you feel that my need of money is going up, you sell up some of the liquid funds, and the bank OD which you had, you top that up. And when you feel that no, your money inflow is much higher than what you need to pay, you again withdraw money from your bank FDs and put it into FDs. That's what corporates generally tend to do most of the time.
Correct. That's what precisely.
The weighted average cost is somewhat better than A or B binary situation.
Right. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Hemant, Suman has come back with his question. He asked, what is the best way to reach to investors for deep tech startup? Its current market size not seen, but overall market value is not much high.
Sorry, I missed the first line. For
okay. So what is the best way to reach to investors for deep tech startup whose current market deep tech?
Okay.
Deep tech startup whose current market size is not seen, but overall market value is much high.
If the market value is not visible, the best hope you have is to explain the same to an angel investor who is willing to put the money and get you off the ground. Because if the value is not determined, the banks and the formal lending institutions certainly don't come into the picture at all. And if you could manage money from friends and family, that's always the preferred source of funding. the next best is to find people who are willing to invest in your idea and take it further. To give an example, Flipkart has some investors. I stay in Bangalore, so there are a couple of large villa communities. A couple of them were initial investors in Flipkart, and now their stake is worth millions of dollars, if not more. And they probably just believed in the idea of selling books when these gentlemen were trying to sell books, and then they expanded, they made their money. But you need to find somebody who is willing to understand your idea, which generally happens. People from the same industry who can technically evaluate it and understand the potential, they are generally the best investors you can get.
I hope, Suman, that answers your query. Audience, we are almost like closing on time. So if you have any questions, please send it across. Hemant is also mentor at wfnen.org. So you can connect with him for mentoring and get the best out of him. And he can also be reached via email. So you can write back to me if you want to connect with him for anything else. As of now, I don't see any question or handouts. So maybe that brings us to the end of the webinar on cash flow management. It was a pleasure having this webinar session with Hemant. I truly appreciate the way you covered each and every topic in detail and also cleared our doubts on the same. I would like to express my appreciation to the participants on behalf of WFNEN for your dedicated participation on the webinar. I'm sure you had a great session. You can check back the webinar link on the website to hear the recorded version for self-learning and access the presentation anytime. You can also connect with the speaker at nen.org, and we'll be having another webinar session shortly. Would like to bring to you another enriching experience and would like expect you to join and get the max out of these webinars. So wish you success in your endeavor. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you all.